I can't speak for other people in this chamber, Madam Chair, but I myself also use cheques, and I can go one better and tell you that recently, having forgotten my chequebook, I had cause to buy that quaint old relic called a postal order. And I was actually quite, very unfashionable, but I was actually quite surprised. I hadn't bought one for about 35 years, and they're really quite sexy now, the way that they look. They're far different from how they used to look. I recall that there was a similar debate to this, again referenced by the Honourable Member for Strangford. There was a similar debate to this, covering many of the same issues at the end of May last year, and all the issues you would expect were debated at that time. How, for some of us, cash is convenient, but for others, it's a vital budgeting tool. The level of control that cash offers, which digital transactions do not. How there's a sensible reason why debt charities always advise those living with damaging levels of debt to cut up their cards as a first step to regaining some financial control. And the way our cash machines are disappearing from our high streets has been referenced repeatedly by members around this chamber. Disappearing from our high streets faster than snow off a dike. The way some businesses are no longer accepting cash payments at all. And the way some 1.3 million people in the UK don't have a bank account and already suffer financial exclusion. And Madam Chair, these were the problems highlighted even before COVID-19, before you factor in the effects of cash no longer being accepted in the current climate. And today we've heard those same arguments and concerns repeated, and quite rightly so. And from that debate last May, how different our world looks now, only 19 short months later. Because now we are living with COVID-19. We live in a world where the cash network has been placed under increasing strain, pushing it ever closer to collapse. Alongside this, we have the continuing trend, as we've heard from many members today, of the considerable shrinking of our free-to-use cash lines from our communities, with 9,500 lost since 2017, and it's feared further losses are on the way, and over a third of our bank branches in less than 5 years, and we can all guess there will be further bank closures to come. And this is extremely worrying, since for many of our constituents, cash isn't just the preferred way of payment, although for many that is the case. But for many of them, cash is their only purchasing method at their disposal, as the Honourable Lady for Makerfield indicated. And something which the Honourable Member for Strangford reminded us of as well, is of course that cash is something that sometimes we all need to rely on, whether we like it or not, because of technical glitches, both with card machines and even some very high-profile IT glitches in the banking world. So I thank the Honourable Member for Strangford for reminding us of that. Now, the Chancellor committed to introducing legislation to protect access to cash in March 2020. However, the pandemic has dramatically shortened the time frame needed for intervention, and unless this legislation is introduced urgently, the ability to access cash, the ability to spend cash, could be permanently lost to many consumers, causing significant harm and financial exclusion. The speed of the stampede away from the use of cash towards digital payments is fine for some people, and good luck to them. However, the price of the speed of the move towards digital payments is that many are left behind, with Consumer Body Which, and many people have referenced the excellent work of Which on this matter. Consumer Body Which revealed that 85% of us would find it difficult to live our lives without an ability to withdraw cash. And that makes the 23% rise in pay-to-use cash machines particularly concentrated in socially deprived areas, all the more worrying. So I share the concerns highlighted by the member for Luton North. And it's this speed towards the use of digital payments that was taking hold before COVID, but which has accelerated at an astonishing rate in the current climate. And that has accelerated the decline in our high street cash machines and bank branches. The loss of bank branches has hit my own constituency of North Ayrshire and Arran. I believe my constituency is one of the worst hit in the UK when you consider distance to the next bank, although I take on board the challenges that the Honourable Member for Caithness, Shetland and Easter Ross talked about in his rural constituency. These are matters that have been repeatedly raised in the Commons by myself and other members, and I repeat and echo the comments by the member for Caithness and Sutherland and Easter Ross about the pressing need for banking hubs. It's really important that those are expedited in all of our communities who have suffered. COVID has made the situation around our cash infrastructure all the more perilous. Many retailers, as we have heard, are simply refusing to accept cash. During this global pandemic, when there is already no end of serious matters to contend with, too many of our constituents have to contend with their lives being made unnecessarily difficult because they cannot pay for the goods and services they need with cash, as the Honourable Member for Dumfriesshire, Clydesdale and Tweeddale set out for us. And research by which showed that in May of this year, only 1 in 10 people had been unable to pay for items with cash during lockdown because they were refused by the retailer. And of that number, 26% were unable to purchase the items that they needed as they had no alternative to cash. In October, which found that 4 out of 10 of those who responded to their survey left a shop empty-handed when they tried to pay for groceries with cash. And that's also been highlighted to us today by the member for Dumfriesshire, Clydesdale and Tweeddale. And this means that action on access to cash is meaningless, as we have heard. Utterly meaningless if widespread acceptance of cash is lost in our shops. We urgently need the Financial Conduct Authority to publish a UK-wide tracker of acceptance of levels of cash. Now, I echo calls for the Minister today to set out what specific interventions his government will take to ensure people, especially those who rely on cash, how they can continue to use cash to pay for essential goods and services, whilst we currently have an absence of legislation protecting this access. Alongside this, we need an impact assessment of the effect of cash refusal on consumers, which considers the role between the acceptance of cash and consumer access to cash. The genuine fear we've heard today in this chamber is that cash payment options have been fatally and profoundly, but I hope not irreversibly, affected to the point that post-COVID future use of cash in our society is on its deathbed. And I suppose what we're here today to do is to try and see if it can be resuscitated. The UK Government has a duty to ensure that this is not the case, that access to cash does not disappear for the sake of our rural and socio-economically challenged communities which rely on this medium particularly. Following the UK Government's legislative proposals to protect access to cash, the proposals for the Financial Conduct Authority to be given the responsibility to oversee access to cash is to be welcomed. But alongside that, it's very important that the Financial Conduct Authority is given proper teeth. It needs comprehensive powers to ensure strategic and comprehensive regulation. It seems clear that expediting these legislative proposals has become ever more urgent in the diminishing cash infrastructure, which has been accelerated in recent months. The Financial Conduct Authority should be given a statutory duty to protect our cash infrastructure and should be responsible for monitoring and reporting on levels of cash access, as well as designing and implementing a framework funded by the industry by which a minimum level of access to cash can be maintained. Our cash infrastructure will not be sustainable without that level of intervention from the government, because we can already see it crumbling before our eyes at a shocking rate, and which has been mentioned by every single participant in the debate today. In addition, the government should set out a clear timetable, as others have called for introducing a bill to Parliament as soon as possible, including the detail and the scope and contents of proposed legislation, with a clear exposition of how it will build on and complement current work being done to protect consumers' ability to access cash. And I know that Conservative governments are often quite reluctant to have such direct intervention on such matters. But when such direct intervention is required, the government must be brave enough to make that intervention.